Hi, Tim.
Hey Betty, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. It's Friday.
Yay.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Tim, tell us about you.
Just that, right? Just tell me about
T-
you, right? Yeah, okay.
Tell us about you. Yep.
We can do that. Okay, so anyone who's watching who doesn't know me, I guess this is my general spiel when I talk about myself. I work as a freelance e-learning designer, and when I'm not working with clients, helping them build custom e-learning development, I also train, support, mentor, coach others who are looking to grow their e-learning careers and their e-learning skills. And I've been doing that for a little over 10 years now.
All right.
Yeah.
And what would you say are some of your biggest accomplishments in life and in work?
Oh, I mean, my biggest accomplishment, I'll say two things. You know, I, I take a lot of pride in the fact that I managed to write and self-publish my own book on e-learning. Like that is something that was so important and meaningful to me, and I'm so very proud of that. And I think the other thing that I've been really proud about is, I grew up uh, incredibly poor. My family was incredibly poor, and every day I have these moments where I I take a moment to recognize the things that I've been able to do in my life that I thought would never be within the scope of my reality. So, like, I'll give you an example. Like, I'm in the middle of selling my house and building a new one. I mean, if I were to have gone back 10 years ago, I'm a millennial, and a lot of millennials are never going to be able to own a home, just
Hmm.
because of the way our society is set up with student debt and pay inequality and all of these things. And so I feel so fortunate that, I own my own business, I work on my own terms. And those are things that, if you would have asked me as a child or even 10 years ago, I would have thought those were just totally out of the scope of my reality. So I'm very proud of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you should be.
Thank you.
Um, Anything else, maybe recent that you've gotten up off the ground?
Oh gosh, what have I been doing? Oh yeah. The e-learning designers academy. Yeah, I've been one of the things that after I published the second edition of my book last year, one of the things that I wanted to do was create a platform uh, to support others in our industry who want to uh, not only learn how to design better e-learning, but also grow their e-learning careers, maybe build their portfolio and jump into freelancing. And that was kind of the birth of the e-learning designers academy. So that's what I've been like knees deep in addition to moving and selling my house and doing all those things
Yeah,
for the past several months.
yeah, busy guy.
Yeah.
So, what would okay, I'm gonna take that last question I asked you, and I'm gonna kind of flip it a little bit.
Okay.
What would others say about you?
Oh gosh.
And what would they say your accomplishments are, your biggest accomplishments?
I Hmm. Ooh, that's a hard one because I have feelings about what people would say about me, how they would define my accomplishments. I have no idea. I guess here's what let's start here. Well, one of the things that I regularly hear from people, and I don't know if it's an accomplishment, but it's something that makes me proud because it's something I work really hard on. Is people say that I'm very authentic, and vulnerable and honest with my feelings or about my own experiences, and I'm very happy about that because it it's not something it's something that I've had to work and put effort into because I wasn't always that way. I was always a very reserved person, and I've put a lot of effort into being vulnerable for people,
Hmm.
whatever the context might be. So I hear that regularly. What would other people say about my accomplishments? Oh, I also hear people say one of the other things that makes me really happy, fills me with joy, is when people say, "Oh gosh, I've been following your career since you first started, and I've been so happy to see how you've grown over the years and made your own way, and started your own
Hmm.
business." Um, and if people find that inspiring, then that makes me happy, because that's uh, if I can give somebody, be a springboard for somebody else to follow their dreams or their passions, then great Yahtzee. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. You said Yahtzee. I love that.
Yeah.
Um, so, all right. So before we move on to the next question, there's just one more thing because just in case somebody out there still doesn't know who Tim Slade is. Okay. The first time we met was at DevLearn 2019, I think.
Was it really just the 29th, the last
I
deadline?
think
That's
so.
in
I think
person?
so.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And I walked into the room and I knew enough about you. Now, just a little bit of context. I do a lot in learning, but I don't do a whole lot of e-learning. I do a lot of the other pieces. So I knew of you, but hadn't necessarily followed you, read your book, or anything like that. But I knew that other people were crazy about you because it was Tim Slade. Oh my God. Anyways, I walk into this room. Do you remember the session?
Was this yes, well, the only reason I remember this was because that particular year, DevLearn, I ended up I ended up spending 2 weeks in Vegas because a company brought me in early to DevLearn to do a workshop for them that they happened to be in town for. Then I had DevLearn, and then I remember Kath Ellis was there from Australia. It was the first time I met
Mm-hmm.
her. I met you, Kara
Mm-hmm.
North, Roberta Dombrowski. I had some old people from GoDaddy there, and then I stayed a week to Vegas. It was just like nobody needs 2 weeks in Vegas.
That's a
But
lot of Vegas.
I remember that. Yes, I do remember this. Yes.
So the reason I bring up that session is because they had to stop people from coming in because they were going to violate the fire code because there were over 200 people at your concurrent 45-minute session.
Yes.
That's a thing, Tim. That's a thing.
Yeah, that's cool.
That
It's
you're so beautifully humble about it.
I
You're
feel
like,
so bad
stop
for the
talking.
I always
You're
feel
like,
bad.
stop talking about it.
No,
Yeah.
I always feel bad about it's don't get me wrong, like that's so much fun and that's exciting when that happens. I always feel bad about the people who can't come in, and
Hmm.
I always hear them in their session evaluations that they wouldn't let them in, and then
They wouldn't
I
let them
feel
in.
yeah, I feel bad
Yeah.
about I feel
Well,
bad
now
for
it'll
those
be even
people.
less people because thanks COVID. But
Yeah.
my point is that you've definitely had some massive success when you go to one of the biggest conferences of the year and sell out the room, the biggest room, by the way. That's a thing.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure people understand who they're dealing with, even though you're being so sweet and humble.
No, well, I appreciate that.
Uh-huh. And he's like, okay, go to the next question.
Yeah.
So, given that, what has been your experience with imposter syndrome?
Ugh. Um, where do I begin with that? Imposter syndrome is something I didn't have a definition for. That emotion, that feeling of insecurity that we all experience. If anyone's watching this, I imagine they experience it. And if you don't know what it is, I promise you probably will have once we define it here. My experience with imposter syndrome, I've come to I've one of the things I'm really happy about is I've come to recognize my imposter. I'm very aware of my imposter syndrome, and I can feel its onset. Like I can feel it in my gut, and I've really what it's come down to is imposter syndrome sets in when I've been pushed outside my comfort zone. And so
Mm,
every time, I'll tell you when it always happens when I make a job change or a career change or I'm moving into a new venture, that always triggers my imposter syndrome.
mhm.
And so the common thread with all of those things is when I've been pushed outside of my comfort zone, um, and that's happened. Uh, I mean, I could tell you examples of me experiencing imposter syndrome right now in my career, and so it's been there since forever. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember sort of the one of the earliest times that you experienced it and knew what it was when it was happening?
Yeah. So Uh, you know, for those of you who don't know, I guess my story about how I got into the world of learning and development and e-learning, I don't have a background in education, instructional design, e-learning, or any of the things that I do nowadays. And I got into e-learning and training and all of that stuff. Um, while I was working in retail loss prevention, catching shoplifters. And one day, my boss came along and he said, "Hey, you're really good at catching shoplifters. There's a role opened in the corporate office for a training coordinator within the corporate loss prevention training team." And I thought, "Oh, cool. This is totally going to advance my loss prevention career." I had literally just finished my criminal justice degree, and I took this job. I was 23 at the time, and I moved across country in my little, really crappy Ford Focus with all of my stuff in it and an angry cat. And I moved from Phoenix to Wisconsin, and it was for Kohl's department stores, where their corporate office is in Milwaukee. And when I got into the job, um, I quickly learned that it wasn't a loss prevention job. I was doing instructional design, and it hit me that I realized my coworkers, my peers,
Mhm.
these were all these learning people, and I was this loss prevention dude. And that was when I think I first really understood what it meant to feel like I got hired into a role on the premise I was going to create training when I knew nothing about e-learning or instructional design or adult learning or anything. I was just a
Mhm.
subject matter expert who got thrown into it. That's when I learned what imposter syndrome was. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you said you still struggle with it. Can
Oh yeah.
you what's sort of been your most recent? We'll kind of do the opposite spectrum here.
Oh gosh. If I were to go over the last year, um, you know, I don't know if it's been kind of magnified because of the pandemic and how isolated we are, and it's really easy to get in your own head when you're sitting at home by
Mhm.
yourself.
Mhm.
Um, but everything from writing the second edition of my book, even starting the e-learning designers academy. There's times where you're doing something, you're trying to create something, and you have these moments where it's not everything you want it to be, and you see other people doing similar things, and they're you know everything people post online looks amazing, and you get into your own head and you just feel like, are we allowed to curse on this? Okay.
Absolutely.
You feel like, what the fuck am I doing? And I feel like shit about it, and it's not everything I want it to be. That's a
Mhm.
great example of, I still suffer from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. So let's talk a little bit more about that, if that's okay.
Yeah,
So,
of course.
I'm hearing like you're talking through some of the thoughts that you have.
Hmm.
What What other thoughts do you have when you're sort of in a moment of imposter syndrome? And with it, what emotions do you have? Do you have any physical reactions that you can remember having?
Oh, that's a good question. Physical reactions. Let me think about that for a moment, but I can talk about the feeling that I have. I mean, the
Yeah.
feeling, the common reoccurring feeling that I have is, oh shit, I want to run back to my comfort zone. And so every time I've experienced imposter syndrome, when I've taken on a new job, when you got promoted, you move companies, you starting a new thing, there's always the sense of, oh crap, I'm on this precipice. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And you just want to quit and go back to whatever you're doing before, because you knew everything that you were doing before. You were comfortable with
Hmm.
it. And so the feeling is just kind of that dread that you have that keeps you up at night. And yes, I can actually define an emotion, a feeling, a physical feeling. Um, I only started really experiencing what I can really say is anxiety within the last 4 to 5 years of my life. I don't know if it's because I'm in my mid 30s. I have no idea what's caused it, or maybe it's because I feel like I'm putting more on the line with everything that I do. I try to take risks, because there's no gain if you don't. But it's this feeling of, it's almost like this clap in the head where you like realize what you're doing, and it like takes your breath away, and you go, oh, you know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense. It
Yeah.
almost feels like it almost feels like you've lost your breath for a minute,
Uh-huh.
you know? Yeah.
Yeah, you've
I
lost it,
get
or
and
you're holding it.
yeah,
Like,
and it usually for me, it comes when I'm maybe laying in bed and I'm about to go to bed at night and I'm just thinking and and you're analyzing, the stupid thing that you said when you were 13 years old in your drama class, and then you're thinking about other things, and then you know what I mean, all the crazy thoughts you have when you're, about to go to bed. And it'll come up there, and then I'll have that feeling, and then I'll get really, really hot and I'll start sweating.
uh-huh,
Yeah, that's the physical reaction for me.
yeah,
I probably need
yeah.
help, but yeah.
I think, you are more like the rest of us than you think. So when this happens, when you have this physical reaction, when you have these intrusive thoughts, these emotions, how do you cope? Like, what is there anything you do or anything you put into practice to make it better?
Yeah, there's 3 things I do. The first one that I've learned is that, and this is hard, it's a kind of a mindset, is I've learned to embrace the feeling of being outside my comfort zone. And I'm not always successful at it. Usually,
Mhm,
I'm not successful at it at first when it first hits me. But I've learned that, like, it's just like with exercise or anything, when you're exercising, if you're lifting weights, you're pushing your muscles outside their comfort zone. And
mhm,
that's why they get sore. But that's where growth occurs.
mhm,
And so I feel like it's the same thing. Like, you have to embrace being uncomfortable, embrace
mhm,
those feelings in order to grow from them. And so while I still experience imposter syndrome, I still sweat when I think about it and it takes my breath away. I pause and I go, yep, this is growth happening. And so I have to embrace it. That's one thing I do. The
mhm.
second thing that I do is that I play this game called So What in my mind. So, like right now, the eLearning Designers Academy. I have strategically not taken on any client work since December in order to do this. I am putting a lot on the line with this. I'm in the middle of building a house that I need to get pre approved for when we come to closing at the end of the year, and I need to have income. Like, I have
Uh-huh.
so much on the line with this, and I'm taking a lot of risk. And I play this so what game. So I go, let's imagine I'm having imposter syndrome, going, gosh, what if it fails? I go, so what? What happens if it fails? No, I got to go do some project work. So
Yeah.
what if I don't get any more clients? Okay, I got to go get a job. It's easy to get really catastrophic in your mind where you're like, everything's going to come crashing around. I'm not going to end up homeless on the street. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's what I do. I play so what? Like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Oh, yeah, update my portfolio and take on a client.
Mhm.
And then the third thing that I do, and I'm very uh, I own this, and I'm very proud to share this with people. And other people might think this is weird, but like, we all do it to some extent. One of the things that I would do is I'll put in my earbuds and like I'll blast like some crazy Beyonce song that makes me feel empowered or some shit, and then I feel a little bit better after that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what I do.
Music is healing. It definitely
It is.
is very helpful. And I love that you talked about the so what you because when you psychologists will tell you this, when you answer the what if,
Mhm.
when you go ahead and answer the rest of that sentence, so like what if this happens, if you actually answer that question, it loses its power over you.
Yeah,
It loses it,
absolutely.
I mean, there's still that what if. You're still going to be mildly nervous, but you've already talked about what would happen. So there's no more
Yeah.
wondering about it.
Yep. Absolutely.
Very cool. Those are great coping techniques.
Yeah.
I think those will be really helpful to
I
some folks that
hope.
are listening.
Yeah.
What would you share with somebody who is experiencing imposter syndrome right now?
Mm. Um, One of the things I was thinking about before we started recording today was that I think a lot of people, and still think this was just epiphany I had literally less than an hour ago. I think a lot of people think the source of imposter syndrome is insecurity
Mm,
or lack of confidence. And definitely those are components to imposter syndrome. But I actually think a big part of it too is a desire to succeed, a desire and hopefulness to uh, uh, do good in whatever it is that you're trying to do or whatever is making you nervous. So, for example, you've taken on a new job, you're really, really excited, you've gotten a promotion or you've gotten a raise, or it's a really great company, and you're feeling this imposter syndrome. Yes, you might feel insecure or lack of confidence, but it also a big part of it's probably the source of it is a desire and a yearning to do good in that job and be
Mhm.
successful and not let your new boss or your coworkers or yourself or your family down. And so, I think sometimes the source of imposter syndrome actually comes from a really good place that we maybe don't give credit to. We think of all the negative stuff. And so, I've said this when I've managed teams before, and I said it a moment ago, is like when you're having that imposter syndrome, embrace it. It's where the magic is going to happen is through that growth. And don't turn around and go back to your comfort zone because you'll just stagnate. You know what I mean? You
Mhm.
have to
Mhm.
push yourself and grow and be comfortable with being uncomfortable. You have to do it.
You have to.
Hmm.
Agreed. All right, Tim, I have just one more question for you.
Okay.
And that is this: why did you want to be part of this imposter
Mm.
syndrome project? What made you want to be part of it?
Oh, well, you and I have talked about imposter syndrome many times before, just one on one, privately. And I think I'm always amazed whenever I've gone to a conference or I've spoken to people in large groups, and I've talking about my own imposter syndrome.
Uh-huh.
Usually telling the story about how I got into the world of e-learning. I'm always surprised at, there's a good 30% of the people who raise their hand and go, What's this? What's this thing you're talking about?"
Right.
And then this is what's magical. I describe it like this. I go, "Oh, okay. Have you ever been in a situation where you've been hired or you're in a situation where you're just waiting for everyone to discover that you're a total fraud? That's how you feel inside?" And everyone goes, "Yes. Oh my gosh, I feel that way. I feel that way right now, or I felt that way." And everyone's experienced it. Some people just don't have
Mhm.
words for it. And
Mhm.
so, once the reason why I wanted to participate was the more people that we can help define and identify what imposter syndrome is, the more people are going to be able to cope with it and deal with it and be better as a result of it. Because imposter syndrome is not going to go away. You can't make it go away,
Mm-mm.
no matter what facade people put on about how confident they are. They're inside, they have imposter syndrome, and if they don't, they probably need to go see somebody or something. So I
If
think
they
most
don't,
people,
they're probably an imposter.
they're probably the imposter. Yeah,
Yeah. Yep.
exactly.
Yep.
Yeah,
Well, we're so grateful that you shared your story and were vulnerable about imposter syndrome. I am just certain that what you had to say, others will relate to and appreciate. So thank you, Tim.
yeah. Thanks, Betty.
If you like this series and you want to show support, go to buymeacoffee.com/ifyouaskbetty to learn more about how you can support this and future If You Ask Betty projects.